Hello, lovely souls. Welcome back to the Awakening to Your Soul Self podcast. I have Jocelyn Bates here. Today, we're going to talk about grief, soul art, and Akashic Records. Welcome.
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So, I always like to start off with who are you and what do you do?
So I am Jocelyn. I'm a mom of, I unschool my three kids from age 7 to just about 15. And
Wow.
I like to call myself a cultivator of curiosity and creativity in the human experiment. And I've had a long history of the arts, arts and healing, arts for performance. Um, and I've also had a long history of being in the therapy fields and spiritual awakenings. And I grew up super holistic. Like my parents were, they used to go to the ARE, which is the Edgar Cayce Center, and we used to go once
Wow.
a year. And I remember being in the, downstairs in the area where all the windows and stuff are. And every year my my mom was like an aromatherapist and she channeled angels and she was a
Mm.
Feldenkrais practitioner. Then there was my dad who was like a truck driver, but he just kind of was he came along with my mom and still had all of this beauty. So I've just been I've had all of this pieces in
Wow.
my life, and it's just been, more recently that it's all come together in a really beautiful way.
Perfect. So, that's a perfect segue. If you're comfortable, can you give a short story of your spiritual awakening?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've always been a bit spiritual. Like even as a teenager, I was 15 when I was taken to get my first cauldron in New York City, right? Like, and
Wow.
looking at the herbs like hanging from the ceilings and reading books and like so I was always spiritual in different ways. And then I kind of went into that therapy world. But even in the world of therapy, I still on the other side was working with my soul, who I am. I've always been
Mm.
interested in like astrology and human design, and I've always kept up with that. Um, I was actually for a very long time when I was younger, I used to do Gabrielle Roth. I used to dance with Gabrielle Roth and the Five Rhythms, which I
Mm.
still do. Um, so I've just always been in this world of like, wow, humanness is
Mm.
cool.
Yeah.
Like this life is amazing and magnificent, and I just like to express. Um, and then for a while, I got out of the therapy field because I had kids. And
Mm.
because I was working with such high risk populations, not at my risk, but I was working with like sexual trauma in teenage girls. I was
Oh,
in the
okay.
jail system. I was working with brain injury and spinal cord injury. I got out because I was like, all of a sudden, I wouldn't let my son climb trees. And I'm like, my daughter's never dating. And like, I was always in that element.
Yeah.
So I got out and I just became a mom for quite some time and taught on Outschool creativity. And then of course COVID happened, and
Right.
that was traumatic for everybody. And during that time in COVID in September of 2021, so I'm coming up on 3-year anniversary right now. But in
Ooh.
September of 2021, my parents, who are very healthy and very holistic and uh, full of life. They were just celebrated their 51st anniversary in Atlantic City for a vacation because they hadn't had one since 2020,
Yeah.
right? Like, and that was their 50th. Um, they came back and they died 7 days apart. So
Wow.
it was a major grief. I think I'm kind of reliving it right now because it's coming up on 3 years, and that three, there's something about the number three.
Yeah.
Um, so that was, and it was totally unexpected, and it was totally just traumatic and full of shock um and really just that idea of completely having PTSD from it. And it was partly because of the
Yeah.
protocols and the time that that was happening, like everything that was happening with COVID. So it added extra layers on it. And so I went into a deep, like 4 or 5 months of just complete shock. I don't remember very much, but being a therapist and knowing that I need to express things, I can't just let it sit in me.
Right.
On top of it, because of the grief was so much of a shock, I lost like 3/4 of my hair. I had 7 teeth break in one day. I mean, it was like really crazy. My body was, I was starting to, I wasn't healing fast from when I was sick. And I just, so I knew I had to express it. I knew it was sitting in me. And so I wrote and I painted a lot. I don't remember any of it. I have notebooks of it and I have canvases. I don't remember putting the paintbrush. to the
Yeah.
candles and you don't remember writing any of it. So I was really in deep shock. And when I started to come out, it was only because of the emails, the financial stuff. But my
Oh.
mom, because she was so spiritual, she would get these newsletters from Human Design Coach
Mhm.
every day. And when I had to go into her emails, I finally made myself go into her emails. I noticed this and I was like, I felt a call or a pull toward it. So I reached
Yeah.
out to this woman and I was like, I need this. She was in the middle of beginning a Heal Your Witch Wound, right? Women's group circle and awesomeness for 6 months through human design. And I was like, I felt the pull and I went there. And she gave me a scholarship because everything was tied up in lawyers and estates and everything. Just to give you, like, I lived with my parents and I
Oh,
homeschooled my
okay.
parents. I'm an only child. Like, they were second parents to my kids. So I was
Mm,
really, they witnessed the emergency vehicles coming. And it was a real, it
that
was a
was hard.
shocker. So and she let me come in and do this, and it started me jumping back slowly into my spirituality. And because I started to learn about my human design, but I also started to tap back into the EFT that I was trained in years ago. And I started to have conversations with women in very moon cycle witchy ways, which is something I think I missed from my teen years. That's what I did in my teen years. And it was so supportive that I began to get more interested and curious and like, okay. And when that program stopped, I was like, I need something else because when you have the kind of grief that I had and the kind of shock that I had, I couldn't open it all up at once. But I
Yeah.
needed a way to tap into myself. And I am a great student. I love being in like workshops and programs. It keeps me connected. Because I'm that good student. So as soon as that ended, I searched for another one. And as soon as that one ended, I searched for another one. And as soon as that ended, and at the
Mm,
end of each program, it was almost like a doorway opened to the next one. I didn't even have to
yeah.
search for them. And so it ended up being like months of human design. And through that, I found the Akashic Records. And through the Akashic Records, and every time I was offered these things for like highly discounted prices or for free. It was like really,
That's amazing.
yeah, I feel like it was my mom just like, here's the breadcrumbs, just follow them,
Yeah.
just keep going. And it made it even more like I have to keep going now, you know?
Right.
And so I kind of got trained in all of that. And then by the second year, I ended up having really high anxiety and panic attacks because it was the first year I was not in shock and my kids were getting sniffles and
Mhm.
my parents died of getting COVID, but they didn't die
Mm,
of COVID, but they died of getting it. And so I would pray over my kids like at night and I wouldn't sleep
mhm.
and I'd be so nervous something really big was going to happen. And that's when I found Yoga Nidra. Again, I feel like my mom just pointed me. I was just following these cues that she was giving me. And so
Yeah.
that really healed me. And because that healed me, I went to the woman I was listening to and I said, "Yeah, I just want to tell you my story. Like you have to understand how you've literally given my life back. Like this is huge." And then she was like, "Come be a teacher." And I was like, "Okay, and I'll do that." So it just continued and continued. And as that time came around, I also jumped into soul art, which is something I knew about many, many years ago. But I was like, I've been in so many like massive like it's a big certification program. And I had been in so many school and I just wasn't ready for it.
Yeah.
Um, and it just felt right. And my soul art certifications have been this journey through my grief and back into wow, the inner wisdom and how grief can be a portal for um just beautiful transformations if you're able to walk into it or walk hand in hand with it. And so yeah, so that's kind of my reawakening was
Yeah.
the grief actually. It was me being an orphan, having no parents to show, but they always showed me how to do everything, right? They would not show me, but
Yeah.
they'd walk with me. And all of a sudden I had to take my own hand and I had to look at this major grief that I had. And in through that, I've learned so much and I've connected so deeply to my soul, to who I am. And in that process, I've helped other people as well. So that's kind of my reawakening would be around that grief.
Perfect. So that's actually a nice segue into the first topic I want to talk to you about is about grief. Grief is one of those emotions that where you feel alone, but you're not alone.
Yeah, so I don't even think of grief as an emotion. Grief is an experience, and because there's so many things tied up into it. And I say often that grief is the loneliest experience. It is the loneliest because you could have 9 siblings. Your parents
Yeah.
die, each of those siblings experience different parents, right? From whatever
No, that's
however they
true.
were,
Yeah.
right? So even if you have people around you and you have, everybody supporting you, it's still the loneliest experience. And yet it's collective, isn't it? No one's
Yeah.
getting off this planet without experiencing grief. We experience it for like wars. We experience it from things across the country. We experience it from loss of relationships and jobs and things crashing out from under our feet. It is absolutely collective and universal. So it's a strange experience, isn't it? And it's
Yeah.
something that we can all connect to each other with. And it's not going to be exactly what your grief experience is, but there is something really comforting in knowing that no one's getting off of this planet without it. Everybody is feeling this in one way or another. And
Right.
when you can connect to other people in their experiences of grief with an open heart, with an open, there's too many places out there that I see, oh, I lost my child. You wouldn't understand that kind of talk around grief. That closes doors. That closes doors. But when you can actually speak and be curious about grief, and that's not to judge, like one is not worse than the other. Each of us experience our own forms of grief and for different reasons. But once you can get curious with your grief, it becomes, um, first of all, a portal of transformation in your life, but also on the collective. I feel like as each of us walk into our grief, we are healing the collective grief and the universal grief.
100%.
Yeah.
So during your grief, you mentioned that your mom was leaving you breadcrumbs. I bet that was actually super healing in a sense where you were feeling alone, but you knew that your mom was leaving you breadcrumbs to be like, all right, you're gonna go here, and then you're gonna go here. And the same thing with the discounts and things. I really feel like she was a big part of that, in
Yeah.
that, you know, if you had to pay full price, you probably would have not gone to that class or gone to that certification.
I wouldn't have been able to because literally everything was taken up for a while in the estates. I just wouldn't have been able to. I definitely think she was in there whispering for me. And, but I had so many experiences. I don't know if it's because both of my parents were just super spiritual. I don't know what it was. But everybody in my family has had experiences of smelling, seeing, hearing. I had almost in that this is one thing I do remember from those first few months. Almost immediately, I had a dream. And my parents, they visited me, and it was like, I remember it because I was like awake, but yet asleep. And then I was like, wow, what's going on? I understand exactly
Wow.
what's happening. And they showed me the world that they were going to. And
Here.
they had said, bless you. And
Thank you.
they had said to me in the dream, don't worry about us. We'll come back to you. Like it's time for us to play and explore. And like they showed me through a window where they were going. And so it was really, I mean, I had these, and then every once in a while I would have a dream later on.
Mhm.
Um, and I still have dreams here and there. And I work in like the Akashic Records and I'm working
Yep.
with my soul, I'm working with my wisdom. I work on soul shamanism journeys. And so they are with me all the time and I feel them. And I love when I feel them because generally when I feel them, I am like I do cry. I cry a lot. Like I can feel
Yeah.
like the hug or and it just really I feel like it comes when I need to release something. Um, so yeah, absolutely. Those breadcrumbs, the dreams, being able to feel and see and smell, my parents around that absolutely helps 100%, I would say.
Yeah. And I love that you got dream visitations. I know not everybody gets a dream visitation. And when you were describing it, I could literally see the window that you were talking about and how they were like, I just want to play and go explore, which, every soul has the right to do. So,
Yeah, yeah. And I think I think you can if part of it is starting to get quiet in grief and open
yeah.
in grief, like to quiet your body and to open. because you experience these things through your clair abilities. You experience it through the feelings in your body, through the visions, through smelling something, through the smell, right? Through we experience it through that. So if you are, if you're in grief and you want to experience, it's also about asking. It's also about
Mm,
saying, I really want you to come and visit me. And I could say 1,000 times for my parents to come and visit me in my
yeah,
dreams, but generally it comes when I need it.
absolutely.
Comes when I need it. And it's like, okay, and all right, and part of it is like I'm very open to it. So if I when I wake up, I don't get right up, right? I like
Mhm.
stay in my sleep and I just feel into my body, who am I right now? Or maybe I write in the morning. Although those dreams when my parents have visited me, like it wakes me up after it. It's not a matter of like waking up slowly or
Mm,
anything like that. It's like, oh wow, that was
that
real.
was
So
amazing.
yeah, but I feel like we can connect to, I mean, I connect to my ancestors too. I've done a lot of ancestral healing over the last 3 years, and I've, even connecting with my ancestors. So you can connect with the people who have passed away in different ways, through meditation, through dream, through opening up yourself to your clair abilities, through writing to them and talking to them, you know?
Yeah, one of my favorite ways is doing automatic writing.
Yes.
So I'll write a letter. Like I remember my first letter I wrote to my cousin who passed away way before her time, and she wrote one back, and it just felt so amazing. We had family issues at that time, so I was just like writing to her, like, I wish, we were hanging out more, we were more in contact, and she wrote back, like, there's nothing to forgive you for.
Yeah.
And I think that's powerful is writing, meditating, however you reach out, whatever you're going to get back is always loving and positive.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm an insight timer and I have a course on automatic writing because I think a lot it's sometimes it's a hard thing to just sit down and automatically write. It's sometimes it's like just first connecting with your own inner wisdom, your
Yeah.
own higher self is automatic writing. And then from there moving into automatic writing with people who have passed or archangels or whoever. My mom used to channel angels and I remember being a teenager and I would go in there, I would stay in this room, and all the adults would be in another room channeling angels. And I remember being there. And this is funny because this just came to in a dream just the
Yeah,
other
yeah.
day. And I would remember I'd be there and I'd be like, it was like the most quiet, still, calm place. And I was never allowed in. I always wanted to be. But then I got this message in my dream that they were all channeling with me in that room. Like, so funny when you think about, just how awesome the universe is. This, our experience here, this human experience that we get to have. It's really so multidimensional, you know?
Very multidimensional. And I actually love that you brought up Insight Timer because I do use that every once in a while when I need a guided meditation. I find that for me, I can't be in complete silence. Like I find that my egoic mind just keeps on going and going. So
Mm.
sometimes I'll go in Insight Timer and either find a guided meditation or I'll find a high vibrational music. So I love that you actually have your workout there.
Yeah, you know what? I only started in mid-January. I had been a Yoga Nidra teacher for quite some time, but I was like, I'm just going to try this Insight Timer thing. But I
Yeah.
love it. I do live events every week. I have like two
Oh,
courses.
wow.
I have an intention course and an automatic writing course. And I have tons of Yoga Nidras up there. And then I also have these like guided curiosities, which goes back to
Mm.
my creativity piece, which is like, I could never meditate. Well, it's two things. What's funny is I could never meditate and sit still as a kid because I was like a Gabrielle Roth dancer. So I was like, I'm moving meditation. Give me Qigong, give me Tai Chi, right? I could
Yeah.
never sit still. And when my parents died, when I started to come out of it, I ended up getting my mantra from transcendental meditation. And I started doing
Okay.
TM. And all of a sudden, all I wanted was stillness. And so I find it so easy now to be still and quiet in like the silence. It's
Yeah.
so weird. It's such a random shift, you know? But the other thing I can like is hard for me when people do guided meditations and then they like say guide you into an environment or something.
Yeah.
And I'm like, or they're like in the forest and there's a stream and the waterfalls at the stream. And I'm like, dude, there was not a waterfall at my stream. Like I'm like, I have very strong visuals when I'm
Yeah.
meditating. and then it totally screws me up. So what I did was I did some guided curiosities of environments where it's just asking, like, what do you see here? It all has meaning. Like, not
Mhm.
taking you through, but like, look at your feet. What are your feet on? Where is there a horizon? Is it night or is it day? Like, and just really exploring into environments, which is totally my jam. Like, it's totally my jam.
Yeah. Like, speaking to that, like on my website, I have a meditation, go into your home on the other side. And I basically just ask questions to the listener every time because every house is different, every environment's different. So I didn't want to impose of what I see. So I just kept asking questions. And I think that's really actually brilliant because not everybody is visual. Not everybody, you know, has that bright, big imagination. So just asking questions during a
Yeah.
meditation, I think that's really fascinating.
Yeah, and it's like I bring people through a deep relaxation first. And it's just that idea, like when you're in a deep relaxation and someone's like, "Oh, you're in a forest." Okay, I'm in a forest. Whatever is there, like, has meaning for you. It has
Yeah.
meaning. Like if you see a path or you don't see a path. Is it night? Are there shadows? Is it light? Is it like what's the temperature on your skin? Can you feel your skin? Like are you wearing, you can just kind of really play. And I love recording those. But I do find that people like my yoga nidras. So actually I'm in the middle of recording like 17 yoga nidras, which is like
What?
a lot. Um, but they come to me, like, the inspirations for these things come to me all at once. And so I'm like, "Ah, I gotta write these down."
Yeah, if you don't write it down, like for me, if I don't write a message down or an idea for, Instagram or a podcast or something, I'll lose it, but then it will come back to me later on and be like, all right, can I go find a piece of paper or my
Right
phone
now.
or something?
Yeah.
But I don't want to lose it again.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'd love to learn about soul art. So can you walk people through like what it is?
Yeah, yeah. Soul art is like, I like to think of it like a shaman journey. Like you go on a
Hmm.
journey through soul art. And that journey has a beginning and 5 stages in total, and it has an ending. And you go in to connect to your soul, to connect to your inner wisdom. There's lots of different soul art journeys. Like right now, I'm getting ready to run a workshop on a manifestation journey that's connected to falling back in love with your life so that you can manifest from that well of love. So each of them are different. Um, but this one, like that I'm working on now, is really connected to the womb energy, right? Where we create from, where we
Mhm.
birth from. But all soul art journeys kind of go through creating an intention, like setting up your journey, and then creating in a framework, whether that's your body map, like outlining your body, or energy mapping, and then it goes into opening a creativity door into a creative expression. And this is something that a lot of people, you don't have to be an artist to do a soul art journey. We've been taught that creativity is rights and wrongs and grades and goods and bads, and that's for the
Yes.
technique people on Instagram, and that's for this. We've been taught that conditioning started really young, really young. I love how now Crayola, have those papers where it's like mess
Yeah.
free and you can't do it outside of the lines. And like, I mean,
Yeah.
we are conditioned so young to like not be creative beings.
Yeah.
And so the idea of opening a creativity door allows for the person in the journey to just play without judgment, without rules, just play.
Mhm.
And usually I work really large with people because when you work really large, it allows a little bit of like, I don't know, like that waterfall to free fall onto the page because it's so big. How are you ever going to like do it? Like if
Yeah.
you have to start like just allowing. It's funny because this manifestation journey I'm doing is more of a smaller one, but like the idea of just allowing yourself to play, letting go, have no expectation of what's going to come out because it's not for a museum. It's not for anything. What it is for is the last two stages, which is to dialogue with your art to see what your soul is saying, to see what your inner wisdom
Ooh.
is saying, and then to create a spirit action from that. And that spirit action, which is generally not too crazy, it's very tangible, that you create from your insights, that when that spirit action is finished, then your energy comes back to you to begin transformations. So it's just like a shaman journey, right? Like in the sense that
Yeah.
you're putting your energy in, you're creating the intention, you're going through this process, whatever that process be, and then you're coming into this place of finishing it with an action, with a tangible thing in this world. And, I just finished a vision quest. The vision quest is like the same. It's the same. You're going, you're setting your
Mhm.
intention, you're going, you're being present, you're, witnessing, you're gathering insights, and you're finishing your journey, right? It's the same, but it's through creative expression.
That is beautiful, and I love that you don't have to have that creative background. For me, I'm
Yeah.
not the best artist out there, um,
You wouldn't believe
drawing
how many
stick
people say
figures
that.
and things like
Yeah.
that, but
You wouldn't believe how many people say that. How many adults think they are absolutely not an artist. And I'm like, it doesn't like, get that word out, because it's just, we are all creative. We are born creative. We just don't realize how long we've been conditioned to do it like everyone tells us to. It's so funny. When my kids were young, I used to drive people nuts because I would let all my art supplies, my kids could get into my professional supplies, because there is something so
mm,
beautiful about a professional oil pastel or like nice acrylic paint,
yeah.
and how it feels. And I have pictures upon pictures, my kids just painting themselves and doing all this stuff on themselves. It's like the art supplies are everywhere, but they're exploring and expressing themselves in these ways that most kids don't allow. They're not allowed. You know,
Yeah.
how
Yeah, I
many
mean, that's
parents are like, my kid will never have glitter?
glitter is very hard, but and I think, you know, art is very freeing. So when you were saying that you give them a big poster or big paper, whatever you were saying earlier, that just allows them to really embrace the creativity and be free. There's nothing worse than having a small piece of paper, trying to be creative, and then you're like, all right, it's full. Where do I go now?
Right, right. Yeah, and we work on like 8-foot long paper sometimes. Like, I'll roll it out.
Oh,
Sometimes
wow.
it's more like, for the manifestation journey I'm working on now, it's more of a square paper, but it'll be like 3 to 4 foot by 4 foot. And it's just this idea of, and the creativity doors, which is something that that as a guide, I walk people through. It's
Mhm.
not like I'm saying, oh, here's your intention, here's your body map, and go have fun. I'm walking people through the creativity doors, through conversation, through maybe sketching or writing, or maybe we pick a few oracle cards just for looking at the myths and the legends that are in them. Like, we're opening
Yeah.
these doors and just sparking some stuff so that they have something to move with and then let go. And then usually from there, like, that's people's favorite part of a soul art journey. They love it. And it's like they don't want to stop. And
Yeah,
oftentimes people hang it in their bedrooms and it's not a small thing. You're talking like 6 to 8 foot long paper hung in your
that's
bedroom or
wow.
your living room. And here they are in the beginning saying, I'm not an artist. I'm not an artist. Do you know?
Yeah, and I think there's something about art that is just so healing,
Yeah.
and I bet when you walk them through, their conversations and their oracle cards and things like that, I bet they don't I can't say I bet they don't. I wonder if they have an idea or they don't have an idea at all and just let it happen and see the ending and be like, "Whoa."
Yeah, for the most part, I would say like 90% of the journeys I've guided have ended in like, wow, that came out of nowhere. Or they had like a beginning, or they had like nothing in the beginning, but as they started to create, all of
Yeah.
a sudden they saw the possibilities. So midway through, they were like, that's what I wanted. Um, but yeah, yeah, it's very, and art is, I mean, that's the piece I take from being an expressive art therapist intermodal for 25 years or 20 years, right? um,
Yeah.
the idea that in that, in the act of art, in even in writing, talking about automatic writing and stream of consciousness writing, the movement of the hand across the page, when
Yeah.
we tap into our creativity, that's like our soul language. And we can get lost. It's almost like a channeling. It is a channeling, right, of
Mhm.
our
Yeah.
deeper seed in our of divinity in each of us. And so, yeah, when as an expressive art therapist, I worked with what's called the intermodal shift, because I was an intermodal expressive art therapist, which means I worked with both visual art, performing arts, all of that.
Mm.
And
That's
when you have the intermittent shift, when somebody starts with one thing, like maybe art, visual art, and then all of a sudden we start working it into a poem or a one act play or maybe music or lyrics. Each time you switch that modality of the art, what happens is that's where the transformation lies. That's when you begin to change it, to move it, to transform it. And so, I mean, I'm very versed on the art, the healing arts, why it's healing. Even that, why do you think there's all these like adult coloring books now? It's just that
Yeah.
there's so much there that you can release of anxiety in these places, right? Um,
Yeah.
and a large part of it in the soul art is working with the expression. So you might be,
Mm.
once you have your creative expression, you're working in the insight phase, which you might be dialoguing. You might be automatically writing with your soul art. You might be like all of a sudden you see like maybe a person in your soul art. You might get up and get in that position and feel what it feels like. And maybe what would you say in that position? Like, and these are where all of these insights come flooding in for people. And I'm always amazed. I always just trust the process, which is a total therapy thing. But I always just trust the process guiding because even if it feels like I'm like, oh my God, there's no insight coming, there's no insight coming, there's always that moment where they're like, oh my God,
Right?
this is uh, and then it opens up to even more insight. So it always happens. It's like amazing.
Yeah. I have a question. So when people are doing this, they're, going with their insights, going in within, does certain colors that they choose mean and represent certain things?
I think it depends on the person. I mean, if I had someone with synesthesia where they can, hear things and see colors, that would absolutely probably really inform their insights.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, sometimes colors are really important and sometimes they're not. It really depends on the person and where they're connected in. And colors mean different things for everyone. I find I often in my soul art have the chakra colors in almost every soul art. I end up finding them. And if I did a soul art and didn't find them, I'd be like, oh, why is that?
Hmm.
Like, that's interesting. What am I, and so like for me, I might be thinking that. But when people go into the insight phase, like as a guide, I'm just asking, I'm not even guiding them into really the insights. I'm just maybe what would that part of your I could say, I suppose, like what's that, what if that color was to say
Yeah,
something to you, what would it say? Or but that generally comes up from the people that I'm guiding on their own, if that's something that they're really focused on or connected to, color, you know?
perfect. Yeah, I've always been curious about art, but like I said, like growing up, it's just stick figures. That's all I could really do and things like that. But there's something about, like we were talking about, healing the adult coloring books, things like that, that's more relevant. And I think now you don't have to draw in between the lines. You don't have to be the quote unquote perfect artist. Um, just take painting or coloring pencils, things like that, and just color.
And I think too, creativity is tapped in lots of different ways. Like I was saying actually to someone the other day, my daughter for a while had this thing about going out of the house. This is my 7-year-old. And
Hmm.
she would pick up a rock and she would just move it to a different place in the yard. And it wasn't like she was collecting rocks in that spot. Then she'd find another rock and put it in a totally different place. And she would walk around and she'd be like, where does this rock want to go? Like, where? That's creativity. That's creativity. Conversations are creativity. A
Yeah.
really good conversation is a beautiful piece of like artwork. And so people tap into their creativity in a lot of different ways. And with soul art, it doesn't always on paper. So I've done soul art journeys where I've worked with photography, where I've worked with video, where I've worked with sewing, where I've worked
Oh,
with
wow.
writing and recording my voice. So it doesn't have to be. Generally, that's like when I'm doing workshops, particularly, that's where I jump in first. Um,
Mm,
but also collage. If you're somebody who's like, I can't do this, right? Like, because I just
yeah.
do, and I'm going to get stuck the whole time, do collage. Like collage has already your images on it. You just have to place them in different directions and ways and see how they work for you on a fuller scale. So there's lots of ways to jump in that are like if you feel like I don't have that But say you're like a really awesome chef. Maybe your thing is food art. Maybe you know how
Mm,
to make a tomato like look perfectly, and that has to be
yeah,
part
yeah.
of your art. Maybe it's food art. Like, you can really play with how you use your creative expression, but creative expression is everywhere. It's like, but and then I think, how we were trying to, like, I think we dumb down creativity a lot. And like I
Yeah.
said, we're conditioned from such a young age, that but this idea of if we didn't have creativity, gosh, would life be dull? And it would probably be a lot
So
harder.
true.
These people who are tech people who create these robots or Apple or whatever it is you create, right? These come from creativity just in a different way. It's just not on paper in the same way. It's how we
Oh, wow.
think and
Yeah.
how we and how we're inspired. And creative conversations are probably, my guess, I don't know, but creative conversations are probably the place where a lot of ideas start. Like, you're talking to
100%.
someone, all of a sudden you're like up like this, you're talking, you're losing time, you're like, yeah, oh my God, I need this and that. Like, I think creativity and conversation is probably the spark for many cool inventions. That's what I would, that's my guess. I have no like logical way of
Yeah.
that's my
But
guess
I mean,
though.
that's a really good point. You know, thinking of Steve Jobs and making the iPhone, that was his creative outlet.
Yeah,
I never thought of it that way. I just thought of it as like, oh, it's an invention. That's what he wanted.
because it's
Inventions
techie,
are
right?
creativity.
Yeah, someone at one point was like, "We need a car." And it would be easier if we had how and their conversation gave them wheels or whatever it be, right? Gave them how
Yeah.
the thing works. Or, at some point, some of it, yeah, of course, is intelligence but it's the ability to look outside of what's given already. It's the ability to take those three cotton balls that you're given in kindergarten to make a snowman and place them
Mm.
in three different rooms. And then look, right? Wrap a scarf from one room through the doorway to the next. Like, it's that kind of thinking that creates all of the innovation. So I
Right.
wonder, this idea that we get so conditioned to draw in the lines, to do things right, to, be given how to do things and how to creatively think. And I wonder, I don't know why it's there. I don't know why we condition
Mhm.
it so much, but we need this in the next few years. We're going to need our creative expression and our creativity, because that's what's going to get us through.
Absolutely. So I'd love for you to talk about the Akashic Records. I haven't talked about that on the podcast yet. So basically, I would love for you to do like an Akashic Records, like one-on-one, somebody who's never heard of it. Like, what
Yeah.
is
So
it? How do we access it? Things like that.
yeah, yeah. So my experience, I didn't know what the Akashic Records were 3 years ago. I had no idea. I was in a human design workshop or in a human design group, and they did a workshop on Akashic Records, and she led us through a meditation to get to your records. And I ended up in a past life, and I was like, I don't, and I knew it was like, I knew I was awake. It was kind of like that lucid dream with my parents. I
Mm.
knew I was awake. It was so much grief in it, and it was so dark, and it was definitely the 60s. It was like one of those Volkswagen buses or
Oh, wow.
the homes, the Volkswagen homes. And I knew it, and it was so real. And I was very emotional in it. So after the workshop, I said to the teacher, I actually contacted the woman who had run us through the meditation. I said, "Well, I don't know how I got there, but what the heck was I doing? I need to get a session with you because I don't want to ever get stuck if I try this again. Like, I just want to know." And
Yeah.
in the first few minutes of our session, she said, "Well, you're meant to be an Akashic Records guide." She's like, "Come, let me train you." And so I had no idea what they were. I had absolutely no idea. The
Mhm.
Akashic records are a dimension of pure knowledge. It's a dimension, we think that we have different dimensions,
Yeah.
and they're a dimension of pure knowledge. And you access them, some people access them through meditation, some people access them through clair abilities. When you're trained in it, you access them through mantras that have been channeled down through the Akashic records. And you kind of work with some people say you don't work with your clair abilities. I have found that my clair abilities are how I tunnel in and get the answers that I
Mm.
need, or the knowledge that I'm looking for. And Um, and so every human being, every living being, I'm not even just humans, every living being has an Akashic record. As human beings, our Akashic records start at the time our soul is born. And it's the information of every incarnation, every lifetime, everything up to where we are, right? And honestly, like into the future, because in the Akashic records, time is like a crystal ball, right? It's like everything's happening all at once. We're not on this linear time that we're taught and conditioned to believe in, which is like past, present, future, right?
Yes.
So when you're in the Akashic records, you can access future lives, present lives, past lives. You can listen, you can access all kinds of things. And you can even go into the records of future events. You know, there's really cool stuff you can do. But as a human being, your records are the basic, the encyclopedia of your soul, the information that you've learned lifetime into lifetime. And you can go into the Akashic records. Anyone has access to their own records. It's you have to be trained to go into other people's records. There's like a real integrity there because actually human beings lost the ability to go into the Akashic records. It was only given back to us within the last 100 years, and it was because people were going into other people's records. You're messing with their soul knowledge. You're learning things
Ooh,
that can,
that's not
you
cool.
know, yeah. So it's a real integrity based work, and yeah, and so you could go in and they're not really for divining. You don't go into the records to like you would throw a tarot card. Am I going to meet somebody or am I going to do this, right?
Mm,
You might do that, but not in the records. The records are for knowledge. They're for wisdom. They're also a place where you can work. So if I know that I have a belief system and I want to know how deep that goes back in my soul, I might find in the Akashic records that it's lifetimes of this belief system, right? I might find that, oh my God, like I have lifetimes of this. I want to go to the root cause. I want to go and find out and learn about it. In the records, you can actually transmute belief systems, transmute contracts, agreements, and deals. And when that happens, it's like you took a knife and just boom, let go of it, right? But then
yeah.
you have to remember after your session with a records guide and you're doing that, you then have to write into your records the stuff that you want to have happen. It just makes it easier to move forward into the places where you want to be. So if you have a negative belief system, you find the root causes and you transmute that belief system, you're at zero. You're at like zero, right? So the
Yeah.
next time you get something come to you and that belief system, it might not pop up immediately. You might have a little extra time to write what you want to believe in that. But it is like you have to then build that belief, the new belief system up, and you can start it in your records, but it happens in real life. So, yeah, so you could do all kinds of stuff. You know, as souls, we incarnate many times. And when we're not incarnated, we create what's called contracts with other souls. And those contracts are
Yeah.
created when you're not incarnated. So, that's like people say, like, maybe you've met someone before, but you've never met them before, or you feel
Yeah.
pulled for some reason and it doesn't make sense, that kind of thing. You might have a contract. Like I've had contracts with all my kids. And I've had to clear some of them. I've had to transmute some of them. Just because I transmute them doesn't mean they're leaving my life. It just means that that pressure is taken off.
Okay.
And so you can transmute and you can rewrite contracts. Like say you had a contract with someone and they're in your life now and you feel like you've learned that lesson. You can rewrite that contract to be more present in where you're at in that relationship. So you could do all of that work in the records. You can have healings and Reiki in the records with your with angels, with your team. You can meet your spirit guides, your guardians. Your I work with my ancestors often in my records. Um, and so that it's a place where it's limitless. You can also go into events and like the land. The land is living. Like our house, it was made of wood that was once living. So I
Yeah.
can go into the records of my house and learn and see and grow, right? But it's not going to divine because time is all happening at once. So
Yeah.
as I change that belief system, as I transmute that belief system, I don't know what's going to happen. So yeah, so it's very cool. I love the Akashic Records.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's a very cool place. I've been there a couple times. I don't see very often, so when I'm in there, I don't get anything visually. I'll get like little messages here and there. Um, but I've also asked before, like, before I go to bed, sometimes I'll be like, "All right, please allow me to go to the Akashic Records, but only show me what I need to know." Um, and sometimes I'll wake up the next day and be like, "I feel like I just have a knowingness of something, and it's because I went
Right.
to the Akashic Records."
Yeah, and oftentimes when people are first starting to try to go into the records, they should definitely use a guide. Like definitely find a guide and be guided there. And one of the things about the records is a lot of people who do meditations into the records talk about a library and books, but not everyone's records look like a library and books. We
Yeah.
experience it through our clairability. So if you don't have, if you're not strong in clairvoyance, you might be feeling it clairsentient. You might, when you're in your records, like try to get to a really, really soft, gentle, still, silent place and start to feel how it converses with your body. Start to feel like when you ask yes or no questions, how does your body respond for yes and no? How, like when I open my records, right, and I sit there, do I start, can I feel like a tingling or a heat or an expansiveness if you're clairsentient, right? You might be that
Mm,
you hear things. Some people hear things, clairaudience, right? Some people just know, and that might be you, that you just know. It's like all of a sudden, no. It's hard because we are also taught to not, we are also have been very, very, especially as women,
yeah.
conditioned to not trust our clair abilities, not
Yes.
to trust our knowing. And so, it's something that we have to look at for ourselves individually. Okay, where can I trust what I see, what
Yeah.
I know, what I hear, what I taste, what you smell, whatever it be, right? So
Uh-huh.
it's kind of developing that trust. As when I first went into the Akashic Records, I I'm an artist, so I always have had an imagination beyond. Like I can look. I remember I used to play this game in the shower. Do you remember those weird mica tiles or whatever? We had them in our
Yeah.
shower, and they have all these little, like, I don't know what you would call them, like little, dribbles and drips of stuff
Yeah.
like in them, like almost you're like fake gold or whatever it is. I
Yeah.
used to stay in the shower, and I would be in the shower for I'd maybe finish washing my hair in 5 minutes, and then I'd still be in there 20 minutes looking at the walls that I'd seen 1,000 times and finding pictures. And that's what I did. I found pictures in the shower walls. And then I'd be like, "Oh, there's a drip coming down, and oh, look at how cool that lady makes that look totally different." So I've always been an imaginative kind of girl, right? Like even from
Yeah.
growing up. And when I first got into the Akashic Records training, I didn't trust my clairvoyance because I had always been taught, "Oh, you have a great imagination." So anytime I would go in and I'd see something, I'd be like, "Ah, I'm making that up. Ah, I'm making that up. I'm making that up." And my teacher must have said, "You're not making it up," like 1,000 times to me. She's like, and she would start saying like, "How fast did it come in?" And oftentimes, for me, the clairvoyance just goes swipes right in. Every once in a while, it like meanders with a mist, like just takes me to a different place. But for the most part, it's like all of a sudden I see something. And it took me like a month and a half to be like, "Oh, I've always had clairvoyance. Like I've always had it. I
Yeah.
just never named it that. It was named imagination for me or creativity for me, but it was like really, it was clairvoyance. And it's not, some people say knowing is the most powerful clair ability, is that knowing. I think it's whatever works for you. And you can
Absolutely.
strengthen and tap into any of these. And I will say clairvoyance is not always fun in the records because we don't always have like these peachy keen kind of past lives. I've had many lives of being raped and prisoner, and I had my head cut off. Like I have had many lives.
Yeah.
And it is not fun to witness them. So, sometimes it's not easy to have the clairvoyance. Um, clairsentience either for that matter. But the when you're in those places of the records, and you're like, say your guide brings you there, try to be really curious. Try to be curious with, what am I feeling? Do I hear anything? Am I smelling anything? It depends on what your clair abilities do. All of a sudden,
Yeah.
do you have a feeling of knowing? And just allowing yourself to play there and allow that to happen. And it is helpful because because I go into my records all the time, I still have people go into my records because sometimes it's just helpful to get someone else to, because everyone who goes into your records is going to feel something different. They're going to tap into different things. I
Mhm.
remember I went into one of my teachers, went in and I went into the records with her. And when I go in with my teachers, I go in alongside them, so we kind of work together.
Yeah.
And she goes out of nowhere. She's like, "Why do you ask permission for everything?" She's like, and I was like, "I don't know." She's like, "Give me a minute." And so we went back into a past life, and I was like working in a court, and I was like not
Oh.
well, I like not like not well, but like not well up, right? No,
Mhm.
I was a servant in a court, and one day I forgot to ask for permission to not stand up from kneeling, and I got beheaded. And so we
Oh.
transmuted that whole, we untethered from that life. We brought my energy back. And it was so funny. I never told my husband. I never told my husband about this. Well, I'm gonna have now.
Mhm.
But like a week later, he goes, "Wow, you stopped asking for permission for everything." And I was like, "I did?" And I had totally forgotten, totally forgotten. 'Cause normally would be like, "Is it all right if could we do that? Could I do this? What do you," and I'd try to ask for permission. And
Yeah.
he's like, "It's been like a week and you haven't asked for permission." And then I told him, like, check this out. So
Oh
sometimes
my
it takes someone
gosh.
else to see the questions that you need. But yeah, you could do so much work on your own in your records. It's super fun.
Yeah, and definitely with a guide for sure. Like, I think I listened to like one meditation and I couldn't see and I couldn't do anything. So I was like, all right, obviously I can't go into the uh Akashic Records. And my guides were like, no, you can. You got to do it on your own pace. It's gonna take some time to get used to being there because it's such a high vibrational energy up there.
It is. And if you have lots of guides and so everyone has their own amount of guides and guardians and angels, and spirit team is different for everyone. Like when I first experienced my spirit team and I went in with with my teacher during the training, and she was like, "Holy crap." She's like, "There's so
Mhm.
many. Like, how do you hear anything?" And even, I don't know if like Michael readings, I don't know if you've ever done a Michael reading. And a Michael reading, I'm an
No, I
artisan, which
haven't.
is like 5 ports in. So I constantly have like there's constant chatter. Like I don't know how I decipher it half the time. But we like if you have a situation like that, like my
Yeah.
teacher went in and I went in and we talked about having someone in my spirit team to begin to just, you know, funnel it for me. Just funnel it.
Oh, wow.
So if you have that kind of thing, you can help with that too. But yeah, I know that's it's something where don't go in like I feel like with anything spiritual, like letting go of your expectations and playing with the words no expectations and allow, because you never know. And then the other day I was talking to someone too. I was saying, if you really want to check out your Akashic records and you think that you're making it up, right? You think like, oh, this is not happening, put aside, stop there and then say, all right, I have 20 minutes free on Friday or whatever, right? And during
Yeah.
that 20 minutes, just block it out. So nothing else, you're not running into anything. And just for the heck of it, just go follow everything that comes up and see what happens. Just follow
Oh,
everything. Don't say no to anything. Just wherever it goes, just go and do it. Like, maybe beforehand you just go in my highest and most
yeah.
healing and good, however you want to do it. But just for that 20 minutes, just say yes to everything and see where it goes. And maybe you'll get a little bit of trust in your process. Yeah.
Okay. I'll have to try that. Yeah. Like I've listened to a meditation on Insight Timer and I just was like, I don't see or feel anything. Um, and I'm like, oh, maybe it's just not time for me yet. So I'll have to try that next time.
Yeah, I actually have a guided curiosity on Insight Timer.
Oh, you
For
do? Okay, I'll have to find it.
So it's really just like asking a guide to come in, and then I'm just asking questions about your space, because too many Akashic Records meditations focus on a room and a library. And
Yeah.
whereas I did experience it as a library one time, my Akashic Record space changes as I change. And sometimes it's a crystal castle. Sometimes it's a hotel. Sometimes it's like, it changes.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's a white room with a white lotus throne. So it's like it changes where I'm at. And too many meditations focus on the library thing to me. But it's all what, some people that works, some people that they need that. And for them, that's the meditations they find. So it's interesting, the way different ways people go in. Like a lot of people go in through meditation. I meditate just to calm down, get into
Yeah.
like dropping in, and then I use the mantras to go in. So
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's interesting. I love this conversation. I feel like, we touched upon a lot of big topic. We talked about grief and how we can heal through our art and the Akashic Records. So I'd love to end this episode with where can people find you? So if you have any social media, your website, and what offerings you give.
Yeah, yeah, I have, like I said, I'm on Insight Timer, so you can find me there. And
Yep.
I have like my automatic writing course and an intention course, and I do live events a lot. So, yeah, and I have lots of tracks on Yoga Nidras there. So you can find me under my name, Jocelyn Bates. And then I have a
Perfect.
website, which is jocelynbates.net. And there I have all of the different offerings, the soul art journeys I bring people on, soul sessions, which are Akashic Record sessions, and um yeah, and I do yoga nidras. Like I actually for a while was doing walking people through an intense creating an intention for their life right now. And then I was
Mhm.
actually recording yoga nidras for them to work into as a sankalpa. So I'm still offering that. And and then I have also on Substack. You can find me under Jocelyn Bates on Substack. There, I actually talk a lot about my grief journey. I just recently put up 2 articles about grief, like the things I learned grieving with 3 kids. And, so I just
Mhm.
talk about the grief and I talk a lot about my soul art on Substack because that's kind of the journey that's been going on for me there. And I'm on Instagram at Soul Sessions by Jocelyn. It's more, I enjoy putting music to my art. Talking about, whatever comes up.
Yeah,
So yeah, I have fun there.
that's perfect, Jocelyn. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for this conversation. I think we, touched upon a lot of things that people will resonate to, if not, they'll learn from.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. All right, friends. As always, have a blessed day, and we'll see you Monday.